Well, hello, let's continue with our three parts video. So this one, the third one, in this one we'll talk about what's the last figures related to attention, and then we'll continue with consciousness. So this figure 21.17, what it's showing is two ways in which we can guide our attention. So one way is what we call bottom-up, which means the attention is driven by the characteristics of the stimulus. For example, in this case, the upper figure, the visual system will analyze colors, intensity, orientation, and some other like motion, etc. Other characteristics of the stimulus. And if those characteristics are salient, like they are very strong, we cannot avoid by paying attention at them. For example, if something moves really fast towards us, we have to pay attention. It's a kind of survival way in which attention works, and we can, for example, escape from danger through this bottom-up guided attention. But we can also guide attention based on our will, what we want to pay attention. If we are looking, for example, for some specific characteristics in an image, like where's Wally, Waldo, looking for Waldo, they told you in advance some characteristic of the stimulus you have to look for, and then you can look at the image, and of course your visual system will analyze it, but you'll be guiding actually that visual system to look for specific patterns. This kind of attention is guided by your will, and it is called top-down attention, and it depends on different brain regions. We have an image of the intraparietal sulcus. This is a monkey's brain, and it's just basically to show you where this area is located. It's another area very important also for guided attention, and we will see this in later experiments. But before that, the authors want to show you some very important cases with human patients in which the parietal lobe was damaged after an accident. And you can see here that the patient is usually unable to pay attention to the half of the visual field. So they cannot pay attention. They can see perfectly. In this case, the patient was an artist, and he was able to draw his own portrait, but after an accident he wasn't able to complete half of it. He couldn't pay attention to that part because he had damage in the right parietal lobe. And you can see here that after he recovered, he's recovering little by little. He was ultimately able to draw again his self-picture. So this means self-portrait. This means that the parietal lobe is also very, very important for paying attention. Then we move to this experiment with monkeys. Again, single unit recording. And what happens here is that, again, the experimenters found a receptive field. So it's a place in which the neurons tend to fire more if the stimulus is presented exactly there, some place in the screen. So they found this. The receptive field is located exactly there when you see in the image, and they show the image of a star in there. When the star is over there alone, you can see in figure A that action potentials are very, very strong, and they respond in front of the stimulus and the stimulus located in the receptive field. The next image shows the task, which consists in the monkey making a saccade towards the fixation point. And if you put other figures, like 8 figures around, even though the star stimulus is still in the receptive field, you don't see action potentials as strong as in the first image. But if you just flash the star 500 milliseconds before the saccade is performed, then again you can see strong action potentials. And this one illustrates the variation of that experiment. You show in the first figure, you show the Q and the receptive field is located where the gaze is at the time, and the monkey understands that now he has to make a saccade towards the Q shown in the first image, so in this case the star. You can see the monkey make a saccade towards the fixation point and the action potential starts, and then after he finished making the saccade towards the star, which is the important stimulus, the action potentials disappear or stops. And in this image you can see it's exactly the same experiment, but in this case the experimenters tells the monkey that the important image is the triangle. And when the monkeys make the saccade, even though the receptive field is the same, it is usually where the star is, you can see that the action potential diminishes. And when the monkey does the saccade, they are very similar. So this means that you can actually regulate or change or modify those action potentials based on attention, where you are going to pay attention to. These figures are quite easy to understand. You just have to pay attention at the arrows, and you have two ways in which arrows move, from bottom up, which are the black arrows, and top down, which are the red arrows. And this is what the author called the frontoparietal attention network in a macaque. This is a monkey brain. You can see all the important areas. And then we move to consciousness, and the authors are going to work a lot in here with what we call visual rivalry. That's why they show these images at the very beginning. This concept, visual rivalry, means that when you look at the stimulus, if you look at them for some specific stimulus for some period of time, you can see that some image appears above the other. For example, the first one, you can see a cup, but if you look long enough, you can see two faces. The same with the other images. You can see one or other image depending on which one you pay more attention. So based on this paradigm, they develop different experiments. For example, with monkeys, they show these two images, one in one eye and the other in the other eye, and the monkey has to press a lever when they see the figure in the left or the figure in the right. In this case, it's easy for them to detect that star, black star, against the monkey face, because the monkey face is kind of blurred, so it's much easier for them to detect the star, so they press the left lever. But you can see there are no so many action potential because this neuron is firing in front of a face. And then in the next, the orange part, they show both images at the same time, and the monkey has to pay attention. He can choose which one he's going to pay attention to. If he's pressing the left lever, means he's paying attention to the left eye, so they are paying attention to the star. And you can see down there, action potentials are not so strong. But at some point they stop paying attention to that and they pay attention to the other eye, the right. You can see they press the right lever, and you can also see how action potentials increased a lot because he's detecting the face, the monkey face. This is the same neuron, so the same neuron, when you change your attention, it will fire or it will stop firing depending on where you're paying attention to. This is in the parietal lobe, the area we saw before. This is the same principle, but with humans. In this case, you can see that superimposed image of a face and a house, and in this case, subject, they just have to look at the image and they have to for example, see one image or the other. And in the image on the right, upper right, you can see how the signal changes. And this is here is important to tell you that there are some brain areas that respond strongly to faces and some brain areas that respond strongly to houses. And you can see when the persons change, they are looking at the house and suddenly they start seeing a face. The FFA, which is the area related to the perception of faces, increase the signal, and the area related to the perception of houses decrease the signal. So the signals in the fMRI signal changes depending on what are you seeing, where your attention shifts to. If what happens is the opposite, you are seeing a face and suddenly you start seeing a house, then the pattern also inverts. And in the figure B, it's just you don't have to see one or the other superimposed. The experimenter forces you to see the house or the face. So when you look the house and it changes into a face, you see almost the same pattern as before. So in the first figure you are changing your attention, and the second one they are on purpose showing one image and the other. So the attention is make it possible to activate more one brain area or another brain area based on what aspects of the figure you decide to pay attention to. This is also some image related to action potentials and what happens when you perceive, for example, images like dolphins or faces, and what happens when you imagine those images. And so first you look at them and you can see clearly that there is a preference to the dolphins images. So there are more action potentials when you see a dolphin than when you see a face. And when the experimenter asks subjects to imagine one or the other, you can also see there are more action potential when you imagine a dolphin than when you imagine a face. And well, this would be all for this class. Remember to see and answer the questions at the end of the chapter. This is very important also, and we will continue in the next class.